Joe with Jamco Controls here again with the second video on the Niagara 4 to SQL Server connection. And in this one, we're going to just make a database and make a user for the database within the SQL Server Management Studio. If you hadn't gotten that, download it. You can just type in SQL Server Management Studio. And I currently use version 21. I think there's a 22 or 23 out. I don't know that it matters a whole lot. It just makes a connection to SQL. In the last video, we did make sure that TCP/IP is enabled and make sure that both the engine, the database engine, and the browser are running. And in this one, we're just going to start SQL Server Management Studio. And I intentionally cleaned out the history so there wouldn't be a connection here, so I can show you how do you find that. Browse, and in this case it's local. If you had a network database, it would be, of course, on the network, and if it's set up properly, you would be able to find it that way. But in this case, it is local, and that's the instance that we used. Here, I could just use this Windows authentication, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use the SQL Server authentication for the main reason we on the last video, we worked real hard to make sure that you guys used SQL Server or mixed mode authentication. If you remember, that username is SA, and you should have written down your password. Here, I'm going to go optional for encryption, and you can do that if you want, especially with it being local. Doesn't much matter. I use a pretty simple password for myself when I'm doing this local testing anyway, and just connect. And here you can see it made a connection to the database. It gives you the instance number, and of course the FQDN, the fully qualified domain name, and instance number. In databases, you've got the system databases, and that's all you have. So there's no database for Niagara yet. And then in security, you have these logins, all the ones that come with it, and then the two that you put in, the SA, or the mixed mode SQL Server admin, and then the one that I included on the install. So I don't have a database. I could right click right here and go new database, but most of this stuff is scripted anyway. So I'm going to go new query, and instead of just going new query and typing it out, I've already done this, most of the legwork here. I use Notepad Plus quite a bit, and I'm going to highlight this whole thing right here. Don't worry about these. Those are for later. And then I'm just going to paste, and then we'll talk about this. So I want this database to be created with this name. And then down here, the first file is that one. And here's the path to the file. And MDF is the actual database name. You have to include these things in there, and the key thing is the next file that it creates, this log file, has to be named differently right here, and then it's got to have this LDF extension, and the max size on that probably needs to be bigger because that's your transaction log. When SQL Server is real busy, all the transactions go to the transaction log, and then when it finds time or clears some queues, they transact to the actual MDF file. So the simple database creation like this can be found downloaded anywhere on the internet. This is always the easiest way to create a database. And you can, from here, you can just highlight that thing and then just go execute. And it'll tell you down here it completed successfully. And then you can refresh here, and there it is. It's got a database in there now. And that's kind of what you would expect. Now, this next little piece is to create a login, and I'm going to just call that thing that user Niagara _ user, and then give it a password, and then set that database up here to its default database. And then I'm going to make that. I'm going to add that member, that user, to the sysadmin role. Highlight that and just go execute. And it says it completed successfully. And we have to refresh. And now it's got a Niagara user in there. That's about the extent of what we need to do in SQL Server Management Studio right now. Our next video will be actually making a connection with Niagara to this actual database and making data go to it. See you next time.